Right. You guys hear me on Zoom? Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Welcome to Taking Down Big Laundry, not small laundry, big laundry. Um, Before we get started, just some quick club news announcements, some upcoming stuff. We got Bug Bounty Wi-Fi router hacking next week. I honestly don't know what they're gonna do, but we have Wi-Fi routers. That they sent us, and we're going to do some firmware hacking, I believe. I'm not sure how they're going to do that because, you got to take them apart and stuff. So I guess that would be a bit more of a group-based kind of like workshop. We also have a upcoming competition that I want to share with the club. Some of you may have seen it. Some of you are already, uh, you know, ready to compete or whatever. But it's called eCitadel Open. Essentially, it's a cyber defense competition that's going to be over a weekend on May 17th to May 19th. And it's not a 2 day long competition. You only have 4 hours to do it. But out of those 2 days, you can pick whatever time works for your team and you can go ahead and, compete. Teams of four, really beginner friendly. It mainly focuses, I believe, on Windows and Linux hacking. So you're trying to hack into a system. Or I think you actually patch it, not hack into it. So you're blue teaming, not red teaming. So yeah, that should be pretty fun. I really suggest it if you don't know, how to do any applied cyber skills. How do I set up AWS or how do I configure it? I was just looking into that. You work with Windows Server and I don't know some Linux server, so it should be fun. We're also setting up some Windows hacking labs. We're working on that on I think Wednesdays, soon to be completed, but essentially, this will be attacking the labs. You get a jump box, and basically, you let rip on like three computers, and you try and gain access to a enterprise network that's simulated. Pretty fun. If you're interested, let us know because it's we're spinning it up on our own stuff, and it's very hands-on right now, but we want to automate that in the future. So if you're interested, let us know. And for today's agenda, basically just kind of talking about what happened with the laundry app. So essentially some snooping, recreating authentication tokens, API documentation we saw success and further findings, some key takeaways of what not to do if you're a CS major and you're building out these systems, and kind of doing bug bounty, essentially hacking for money and whatnot, and maybe looking at some potential targets you could also do on the campus, in good faith, of course. Not blowing up the laundry machines here or whatever. Setting their RPM Stuxnet style. But yeah, and questions at the end. Just because I don't know how long it's going to take. Some of them are going to, some slides take longer to explain and whatnot. So try and hold off questions until the end, but do keep that in mind that it'll be the and a fair warning to anyone reviewing this video, or if admin walks in, we have a disclosure thing. We did this the proper way through CISA, which is Department of Homeland Security agency. So it's official. I can talk about this. Anyone can, because the laundry people did not respond in time. So we're setting fire to them now. Yeah, we initially, or this was initially found, I think, back in early January. I think January like 20th or 18th, somewhere around there. Yeah. So there has been quite a lot of time since then. They've had pretty much about 4 or 5 months to respond or notice the intrusion, quote unquote. But yeah, so this is in good faith. We went through appropriate channels, didn't respond. This is technically public disclosure. We are in the right, you're in the wrong. Admin, you can't touch us. Yeah. So let's get into the main stuff. Hacking the laundry app, and take it off to
Hello, I'm Alex. You might recognize me from the guy who took this photo in the Slug Security Discord. Um, I get way too invested in projects, but I'm not a hacker. This is my first year at UC Santa Cruz, and I think my only hacking experience, I did like Sekai CTF in like end of summer, and I didn't get very far, but I didn't expect this to work. How did this work? Let's get started. So before we get into it, like initial motivations, I kind of just wanted to query the status of like laundry machines on campus because I kept going to laundry rooms and then they were all in use, so I had to go like 4 in the morning or whatever. I was also bored and just curious, might be fun. So this might get a little technical. Uh, these are the tools I use. Well, I kind of use HTTP Toolkit, which is it's free. You can use it to intercept requests. And I also use the Android Studio emulator because it works really well with ADB debugging. So first, the CSC Go app. It's the only way you can really activate laundry on campus. There is a website, but you need to pay like a 25-cent conversion service fee or something. But it has multiple sign-in methods. The easiest one is an email address because it doesn't even ask you to verify the email address. You can just use it. And the authorization is done through auth.mycsgo.com, and it's a front end for this authentication as a service platform called Auth0. So how does Auth0 work? Wait, actually, sorry. When you use HTTP Toolkit for the first time, a lot of requests show up. Most of these are just analytic stuff and just kind of like, whatever. I mean, some of them are a little important, like this one will be important later, but narrowing it down to just the authentication and login screen, we want to get the token. So it reveals these few requests. And I basically had to figure out, reverse engineer how this works to get the auth token at the end. So it might get a little technical, but how does Auth0 work? Well, first the client sends a request to the server. I'd like to see the login, please. Here's a bunch of parameters. And server replies, actually, you want to go to the login page, and here's some cookies. So it gives you the login page. And there's also some auth data in the login page. I think it's encoded in base64. So the client needs to decode that. You enter your username and password and whatever. And then when the also here is where you call the sign up function, the sign up request. And then once you have that, you send them the email and password. You'd like to log in, please. Send it to the server. Server sent you an HTML form if you had the correct username and password. And for some reason, I don't know why, but the client automatically submits that to the callback function. And the server is like, go to this URL with this new state to resume authorization. And then you can finally redirect you to the app with the code, and you can use that code to give the token. So it's simple, right? Not at all. Success. But where do these parameters come from? I kind of glossed over them earlier. But it's just it baffled me for like hours. I was like, where there's just a bunch of random garbage. It's like, where does it come from? Well, I did some digging. It requires you to look at the OAuth2 specification, which this is actually a code verifier, which is a cryptographically between 43 and 128 characters long. And the way it works is that you're supposed to SHA-256's hash into a code challenge, and then send those both to the server. And if it's correct, it'll send you back with the code used to get the token to just make sure nothing happened to your request. But yeah, it's basically whatever we want. So I can just set that in the login script or whatever, and it'll work fine. So we're in. But where's my sign up bonus? There's that promotion where like if you sign up with a new account on a new device, you can get $5 for free to do laundry for free. But this is actually triggered by a different post request. And we'll get into the API documentation later. But remember that registered device token I told you to remember earlier? This is where that token is passed into this request to make sure you're on a new device and you're not just creating a billion accounts on one device. So it doesn't actually check if you actually registered the ID. So you can just put whatever ID you want in there. As long as it's unique, it'll work fine. So yeah, I guess I'll hand it to you.
Right. So Alex basically just described, hey, we found this kind of, request that's able to give us that reward. But, this service needs to do other things, right? You sign in, you log in, you start a machine, you do various tasks, you maybe deposit funds into your wallet, things like that. So that all happens through API calls, right? API just being kind of like a reference to some function somewhere else, and then you can call it. It's available everywhere, and you can pass in information. And we're developers, so we have the past knowledge of kind of using these technologies in our own projects. Other applications have APIs. Twitter has an API of fetching and sending tweets. Maybe it's the same thing here. And of course it is, because, otherwise it wouldn't work. So we need to figure out where all of these kind of function names or these URI elements live. And usually we find that in documentation, right? Someone writes down, maybe in a notepad, or probably, that's a bad idea, but in a notepad or some kind of code file or whatever. But usually we use some kind of documentation pipeline that automatically generates from our code. We have a separate page on our website for API documentation. Twitter has this, Instagram has this, Facebook has this, and that usually follows a popular example of, URI versioning, because, hey, eventually you'll kind of, swap around things, change things up, and you have different versions of API things or functions you can call. And those kind of follow open API standards, so it's pretty easy to work with. But we need to figure out where they actually live. So if we kind of look at, how we do documentation in production or kind of in the real world, we usually use automated tools. There's things like Swagger. It's honestly the only one that comes to mind, but I know there's other ones that a lot of people use. Rust has it, things like that. Rust docs, things like that. You've probably seen them. Maybe think of man pages when you think of like API documentation, because it's pretty much similar to that. And usually what we see with websites for API documentation is they usually live at /API, or, API dot whatever website. So api.example.com. Twitter has theirs, I think, at api.twitter.com or something like that, or it's twitter.com/API. But essentially that's where it lives, right? And usually they have that versioning, which I talked about earlier. You have version 1, 2, 3 for your API. So we usually see something like /API /v1 /docs. And, the smoking gun here is, if you just try that with the CSC Go app, you get the smoking gun. You get the entire API page. So you can actually visit the site right now, and you can see everything you could do on the app in plain view. You can look behind the curtain. Anything you could do on the app is going to be on there. Even things that you can't do on the app because they hide it. Maybe like a technician needs to shut down a machine. Maybe that API call is on there, because this is essentially their wrapper for everything you're able to do, how you're interacting with machines. It's on there. And if you look at the page, look at all the things you could do here. So, you can get your account user, you can maybe update your user, you can delete users, you can update your password, look into your laundry stuff. There's a bunch of command stuff here, payments, and you can see that there's a lot of different stuff, because, this is a very large company. They have a lot of integrations with different services, things like that. And essentially, they have a lot going on. So this is their way of kind of putting all that stuff in one place, where developers or people who come onto the project to modify or work with them, maybe they have a new laundry machine line. I don't know, it like smacks your clothes with a hammer or something like that. I don't know. The function would be on there. Initiate like hammer laundry machine or something. I don't know. Probably not be like that. It'd probably be, in a subclass or whatever. You just pass it in as a parameter. But essentially, it's all the functions that you could do on this laid out for you. And the nice thing about this specific tool, Swagger as it's called, is you can click on it and they'll give you example calls you can make for each one. And it's pretty powerful. You get into the machine section and you can see all this different stuff. Hey, that cool start machine with Aiden Payment. Aiden is some payment processing service. They have multiple variations because they're, I'll go into this later, but they're not very good programmers, but they kind of have several variations. You can also see, hey, get machine status, get machine by its license plate, its QR ID, its NFC ID, its sticker ID. You can check the health of the machine, see, hey, what error code is it showing on the thing. I've done that a few times where it's like door won't close or whatever. So I like opening up the API. Is it like some internal error or whatever? No, it's just they have really bad like door sensors and bad lights. But essentially, all that stuff is here, and it's pretty fun to play with. Um, so I'm gonna give it back to Alex, and he'll explain a bit more.
So you may notice there's some machine stuff. Start machine, whatever. I'm gonna focus on this one for post requests. Start machine with payment. You notice there's an amount parameter in there. So like what would happen if you put 0 in there and run the request? So surely it wouldn't run the machine, right? So yeah, I don't know what to say. I will warn you, you can start machines. You can't start a machine if it's already been started, it doesn't do anything. And if you start a machine, you cannot change any of the settings until you press start. So, don't, I'm not advocating, don't do this, but yeah.
So big laundry's coming for you for that like $75. I hope you know. So yeah, you kind of saw what happened there, right? You changed it to 0, it charged him 0. So, with that knowledge, there's some pretty scary stuff. You deposit funds into this. That's how you pay for your laundry, right? Or I don't know. Some of you kind of do that whole like, oh yeah, I'll claim the rewards thing or whatever. I saw some people going crazy about that, like, oh yeah, I made like 40 different accounts. I got $5 in all of them. Whatever. There's ways to bypass it, but hey, we can control the API calls and the parameters that get passed in. So what's more fun than seeing a wallet section in this API API list? But yeah, so I want you to look at this and which one stands out? Is it deposit funds into wallet, or I don't know, they all kind of look like that, but hey, that kind of stands out, and they have like some older ones that got deprecated. I'll go into that in a bit later, but yeah, deposit funds into wallet is probably like the most attracting thing in this entire list, other than getting your token to log in or whatever. So looking into this, can you see what's wrong here? Here, let me highlight this for you. So not only can you control the amount you put in, but they put in a thing that says payment successful, and you can control that variable. So this kind of goes back into like programming 101. If you're a game developer, this is probably the biggest thing you need to learn is never trust the client. The client can just straight up lie. You don't know who the client is. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to go to that page and I'm going to say, hey, ServiceWorks, I just deposited $1 billion into my account. Payment was successful. ServiceWorks is just like, I'm happy. Looks good to me. So that's what happened that night we were testing. I didn't think this was possible, but you could just put in any amount you want, and the zeros over there are just because it does sense for the amount. So you just multiply how many dollars you want by 100 or whatever. But yeah, so I was just playing around with this because I initially thought, hey, there's no way, this can work, but you can see me doing some test runs there where I'm adding like $1. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of small, but then I move up to like 100, and then I had 96 because I'm like, hey, that I think, you might be able to do custom amounts because in the app they only let you do in like 5, 10, 25, 50, and then I think like 100 or whatever. But I was like, maybe I could write in my own custom number, and holy, you can. So that's the story with that. It's just you can control the amount of money you just put in there. And they're just like, okay, it's like going up to a store in a game and saying, "Hey, I would like to buy this apple for like 3 gold coins," but you have access to the backend logic to make that like character say something different, and you say, "I'd like to buy this apple for 0 gold coins," and they're like, "Yeah, sounds good," because we're not doing any server side authentication, and essentially that's the biggest problem here is they're trusting the client. They're doing all the verification on the client, which is absurd. And that kind of shows you how powerful, peeking behind the curtain is just you're able to do this stuff because everything is kind of going through API calls nowadays. Everything is a wrapper for a browser. You open up Discord, that's really just a browser in its own application. And you could do the same thing. You could send your own messages through API calls. You don't even need to use the Discord thing, use some Discord terminal thing, never have to open up Discord and use Electron. So, this kind of is like the holy grail. And a lot of people were like, holy shit, you're going to like jail after this because they saw this big number and they thought that, hey, this is like actual money you're stealing. Um, but I kind of did this a lot with games like in my earlier years. So I know this is just like some fake money. And of course, there's going to be some like auditor at the company, which I'll talk about later. That's like someone just deposited like $1 billion into their account. Something looks off. And I actually reached out to the account like manager for the universities in this area. They didn't respond, but they definitely know something's up because they took that money away a bit later. But if you do small amounts, nobody's gonna know. So, I was talking to my friends, they're like, "Oh yeah, this is generational laundry wealth here. Um, you know, pass this down to your children or whatever." So yeah, so the findings here essentially is uh, with this whole API debacle, you can essentially spin up any machine you want free of charge. We were originally worried about this, kind of describing it, because you got to search for machines, right? You've opened up the app, it says, hey, enter your zip code to find machines in this area, and you have like some area code or whatever, things like that. And they kind of bring it down to like locations and then room IDs and then laundry machine IDs, things like that. And we were worried because you have the power to basically search for all machines on their entire network by just kind of iterating your zip code. I know, zip codes are 5 digits, but you can essentially kind of iterate through every zip code in America, get every laundry machine in that zip code added to a giant list, and then you could just directly say, hey, I want to turn all of these laundry machines on. And, if you do that, laundry machines and like dryers, they take up a lot of power. And we're like worried, shit, you might kill like the power grid if you just start like all these machines on at once. But luckily, you gotta physically press start on the machine, so it didn't really come as a worry after we kind of thought about it. But yeah, and uh, Alex kind of said that machine settings are locked until you basically do. So you can't really do much if you're not physically there. But hey, you can start it remotely or whatever. So if your friend is in the laundry, remotely start the machines in that room for free. They go around pressing start on all the machines. Be funny. But yeah, pretty hilarious. You can give yourself infinite amounts of money. You know, I don't know if that really makes sense since you can start machines for free. But I guess it's a lot more user friendly if you don't want to open up, your terminal every time you want to start a machine. But yeah, you can create and delete accounts. Uh, there's no verification for your accounts. You can just make it, pass in a email and password. You just need to meet the password criteria. Email doesn't need to be real or whatever. You just need to log in through the app once so it can get your location ID, or you can just go through the API and set it, whatever, things like that. And kind of more scary is that you can extract payment details from an account. So if your friend is like working on this to recreate what we're doing here, and they say, "Hey, give me your login so I can give you money on the account," and you've used a credit card on the app, they can get to your credit card. It's kind of hilarious. But just make a new account. But yeah, so it's only if you have the login details you can really do this stuff. But uh, you know, you need an authentication token that comes from that stuff. So honestly, kind of mixed, but giving yourself infinites of money, whatever, laundry bucks, you can do that. Pretty fun. So the key takeaways from all of this is never trust a client. Um, that I feel like that should be more, said in today's world. But I see a lot of people making this mistake of, hey, quote unquote user doesn't have control over it, but they really do if they kind of reverse engineer it or they just take it apart a bit. Uh, they can control different parameters. They can basically do anything. So if you're not checking on the server, you're gonna be out of luck one day when two random people just discover that you can give yourself billions on your laundry app. And they're like $1 billion company, so could really tank them. So don't publish your API documentation. I don't want to scare people away from like open source, but usually you don't want to publish your API documentation used for production, especially if you're a proprietary company, right? This isn't like an open source case where it's like, oh yeah, we got to open source this laundry standard. This is like a private company having their own business, right? There's no need to publish your API documentation for the public. It just makes it easier for people to kind of reverse your logic and get their way into your systems. But that doesn't mean that not having documentation published is a roadblock because Alex originally did this by intercepting a request and getting that API key. So, people can just look at things. You could do this in your web browser as well. Open up DevTools, look at the network. You can see all the API calls being made. And it's essentially the same thing. It's a bit harder on mobile because, they don't give you a DevTools interface there. But hey, you can just kind of open up a debug instance and go about that. Number three, rule one, don't trust the client. It's understated, but kind of go for that. And then it's about the low hanging fruit. It's a bit more impressive to like take down a really common and low end system than it is like, oh yeah, I did like a 0 day on this some weird hack overflow for this buffer I got into the server, whatever. This is a lot more impressive than like, just kind of going through this large exploit chain because this is the main type of exploits you see nowadays is it's not these large vulnerabilities, it's misconfigurations of these services where it's like, hey, I'm not checking how much money you're actually giving me. All the payment ID stuff doesn't even matter, so it's not like they're going to audit you or whatever. But yeah, this was a pretty bad in my opinion for the company. And for the full release of this, I think we're going to post this online somewhere. I don't know, we're working with like TechCrunch. They have pretty cool posts that are similar to this. You can see my messages with him. So yeah, he was telling me that it's like over 1 million machines on the network. So you can just imagine, how many people are affected this. Mr. Robot style, eradicate all laundry debt. Give everyone like $100. Uh, you know, give them laundry for like I don't know, like a year. I don't know how much laundry people do in like a year, but hey, maybe $100 is enough. Uh, but yeah, the company hasn't actually responded when we went through Vince or CERT. Essentially, it's kind of like the Vulnerability Coordination Center or whatever through CISA. They said that they didn't even open it up. They tried to email them. I tried to contact them a few times, but they know something is fishy, right? I talked about them kind of taking that money away. You can see that, hey, January 20th, I gave myself like $13 million or something like that. And then like a few days later, they're like, something's not right here. Let's just take that away. And I kind of did the same thing. So some developers kind of just curious of why this happened. Um, but yeah, I don't know when we'll publish it, but I think, seeing these slides is pretty understandable how you can recreate this if you really want to. I honestly don't care. because I gave them like 4 months to reply and they didn't. So I'm in my right to disclose this, which I'm doing. But yeah, if you're interested, maybe go bug Alex. But yeah, so this was fun, but you can also go a step further. That's kind of it for the laundry app. So we're going to talk about kind of doing this for other things and also maybe even getting paid for it, whatever. Bug bounty, as it's called. So your available options when you're doing bug bounties is, companies know they can't really win against hackers. So what they do is they essentially pay people to hack their companies. Uh, and you get a reward. Usually, sometimes it's like a shirt. I know if you hack the German government, they give you like, oh yeah, I hacked the German government and all I got was this lousy shirt, but you also get cloud for it. So everyone is happy in the end. Sometimes you can, be evil about it and go sell your exploit for even more. Uh, and that's kind of how bug bounty works, and it's a lot more streamlined. Right? There's applications you can fill out, things like that. They specifically say what you want to maybe accomplish with your bug bounty, things like that. And you have a really cool benefit of you can't sue me because it's a safe harbor because it's done through a bug bounty program and it's for good faith. Um, and this is sometimes what you see with news segments of, hey, someone found an exploit for this. They told Google they got like $1 million out of it. But yeah, so it brings awareness to cyber. Bug bounty, here's an example of how it looks like. Hey, you got like a bunch of different applications. Hey, you got OAuth up there, what we just targeted. They're a company that powers things, and if you hack them directly, you make like $50,000. Pretty cool. Real money, not laundry bucks. So kind of special mention just because they're doing stuff for us, but Bug Crowd, they're doing stuff with our club. They want to get into Bug Bounty. You can contact the people from Bug Crowd on our Discord for the invite-only programs. Some of them require NDAs, so be mindful of that. But yeah, as I said before, hands-on training next week for Wi-Fi hacking or whatever. Like for example, they invited a few of the club members already, Mercedes Benz and HSBC, which is some bank company, whatever. They're not sending us a Mercedes to hack into, but you get to hack their website or whatever. So kind of cool. But there is some bug bounty programs where they'll send you hardware to hack. It's pretty cool. Some personal thoughts cooler than HackerOne. There's a lot of smaller bounties on there. So if you want to do some simple web hacking, you can get like a few $100 out of that. As I said before, some programs are covered by NDAs, so you can't really get cloud from that, but yeah, money. So yeah, I suggest you give it a go. There's like a bug bounty channel in the Discord, so you can collaborate there, stuff like that. Look at smaller stuff. You'll honestly be surprised what can get you money for bug bounty. It's like, hey, I just sent a message or one single request that gives me like $300 because I can change the color of a web page, and no one likes a defaced site. The downside with bug bounty. So not all companies have this option, right? We talked about what happened with ServiceWorks. They're a bit silly. They don't have any official contact. I had to basically call corporate and say to the person on the help desk, hey, I found this like exploit. And you should really get back to me. And they said they opened a ticket, but nothing happened. So bug bounties are a safe harbor, but some companies get, I think, and ServiceWorks, they probably might not, understand that this is what hackers do. There's a really good DEF CON kind of talk about this called The Risks of Pointing Out the Emperor is Buck Naked. You point out the Emperor is naked, he like kills you. You don't want that. So there's ways to approach bug bounty. And honestly, the security community is pretty big. So people are more likely to defend you. This happened with Marcus Hutchins, Malwaretech, when he stopped WannaCry, the ransomware that kind of took over the world like 2018, 2016. And essentially FBI went after him, and like some random people in the hacker community just paid his bail, which was like, I think it was like $50,000 or something. But if you're doing this in good faith, there's people behind you. So you shouldn't be scared. There's some solutions if you're just looking at random companies to kind of try and get into. First you can just Google if they have a security page, or there's a standard nowadays. It's called security .txt. You can look at that standard securitytxt.org. You can honestly just try calling them, call corporate, say, hey, can I talk to your IT department? Doesn't always work, but yeah. And then kind of what we did is we tried all those options and we just went to Homeland Security or CISA, and they kind of directed us to the CERT Coordination Center. CMU technically runs that as a university, but yeah, they're connected with CISA, so you're under like federal protection when you're disclosing stuff in good faith there. So don't be scared. It's actually pretty cool. Uh, cool people on there. It's just doing that if you run out of options. How are we going to improve security? So, honest opinion is you got to just start looking behind the curtain. You'll have an app, start taking it apart. Something looks funny, play with it and see, what you can do. Google has the same thought where they develop something called Google Clinics for companies that can't afford security, a security team. So they get random people to just come in and try and take apart the website or the service and try and hack into it. And, that leads to them finding vulnerabilities, and it's pretty cool. So Google supports this. So that's the way we do things. Just start hacking things and see, how they work. So general rules is I think you could basically just hack into anything as long as they don't say it's off limits, because that's really on them in this kind of age of everyone has like a bug bounty program or like some security thing. Some companies don't, as obviously shown before. But if it's not off limits specifically, I seriously do it. Don't go to the public right away. There's a disclosure process kind of where you have to like attempt to reach out to them, and then you give them a few months, and then if they don't respond or they don't fix it, you can post it online. And I would really reconsider doing it, especially if there's like private information, because yeah, you're proving that this company is doing whatever, but you're also going to be maybe ruining some people's lives. So, be careful of that. But yeah, don't be too scared. Um, when it comes down to it, jury of your peers, it's did you have good faith when you were doing it? So if you did, you're set. But if you're like evil and you're saying, yeah, I'm gonna take down big laundry and I want to blow up the power grid, then you're probably messed up. And you get the 20 years in federal. This is what I mean by off limits bug bounty programs. They have something called in scope and out of scope. If they say it's in scope, hey, feel free mess around it. If it's out of scope, they just don't want you touching it. Maybe it's some kind of testing environment or whatever where there's sensitive stuff right there. But anything here, you can break and hack into. Out of scope, don't touch that. Slap on the wrist and you're not protected by the law. So, pretty cool. This is Mercedes Benz. I don't know. This is kind of like the program. I don't know if I'm allowed to share this. It's like invite only program, but hey, you can see this. Pretty cool. And for similar projects, right? I was talking about stuff you can do just like this whole laundry thing is you can essentially look up online. And I was kind of curious, hey, this CSC Go thing was pretty easy. What if we could do this with Get, right? Instead of generational laundry wealth, we have generational banana points or like flexies or whatever. So pretty funny. And hey, that happened like 2 years ago, except at some universities they use Get to get into buildings instead of paying for their food. But hey, it's honestly the same exact issue we were talking about just now with the laundry app. Is someone found out, hey, I could just replay API calls with like authentication token. I could do stuff. This guy was able to get into any building he wants to because he just went to kind of like a similar extent of, hey, I could see what API they're using. Let me just try a different door ID number, and it like opens up, a different door, just like that. And same exact thing. He tried to reach out to the company that runs Get, Seaboard, or whatever it is, and they did nothing. So he reached out to TechCrunch, which is, why I mentioned TechCrunch before, is they just don't have any like security program out there, and it took them a while to fix it. But yeah, it's kind of ridiculous at this point. Um, And to kind of wrap it up, here's a little hint at messing around with Get right now is you can change the amount of money you want to put in. You can disable convenience fees. It's a little bit more tricky than the CSC Go thing, but hey, if you're curious about being the next generational billionaire on laundry or the dining hall, or whatever, look into this. Um, I think it's pretty fun. Uh, you know, this one is a little bit more easier because you can use DevTools and it just makes it easier to actually don't need to do any like funny app stuff. Uh, they have a website. You can probably look it up online, but essentially the system is looking at these requests and just going behind the curtain. And honestly, that's pretty much it. It's just look behind the curtain. Um, so we're ending 15 minutes early, but we have questions, right? So I don't know if anyone has questions. But yeah, someone let's start with Zoom first. Any questions in Zoom?
I think you kind of already answered that one. Abby asked, like, what would you suggest the company change to make their application more secure? Just like, don't trust the client. Don't ever trust the client. Do your validation on server side. Make sure everything's correct before you actually start dealing with numbers in your database or like start changing values. So,
Um, Anyone from the audience have any questions or concerns or statements or I don't know subpoenas to hand over? Yeah. Okay, so actually here, I will tell you right now. So, uh, someone just said that they fixed the thing where you can add money. So I'm going to debunk that right now because I ran into that a bit earlier. So hold on. All right. So this is oh, that's not it. Let's see. Oh, what? Okay. So we have the wallet stuff here. So originally we used deposit funds into wallet. Now I'm pretty sure because of my funny activities of depositing millions into accounts, they saw that and they're like, "Hey, that looks suspicious." So you want to know what they did? Well, you see how there's another one, API v1 account wallet deposits, and it's marked deprecated? Guess what they switched to? They switched to that one, the deprecated one, and they just didn't update the documentation at all. So if you really want to do it, it's the same parameters as the top one. It's just named differently. They just switched to the deprecated one because they thought, I don't know what's happening. I'm just going to switch the API endpoint and hope it works. So if you really want to do it, I tested this like a few hours ago. It still works. You could just go in there and deposit money into your account. So have fun with that. I fun stuff. Um, and as always, if you don't want to recreate your GWT thing or whatever stuff like that, come ask us. This is public now. So, any other questions? You have a question? So yeah, so it's round Swagger. So you kind of have this example values where this example stuff is like generated from the actual code. And you can kind of see that they give you what they want in the request body. They want the amount, they want payment successful, true or false. They want currency, they want payment ID. By the way, that just means nothing. Method is kind of they have like 10 different methods or whatever. It's what shows up as where it came from. But if you do stored value, just whatever. And then they have like Stripe or Aiden. There's like those are two different payment processing platforms. Those don't matter. So the only thing that matters here is that there's an amount and then there's a payment successful. Everything else could be left as is. If you want to be sneaky beaky, you make like random values in the payment ID so they think, oh yeah, it's the weird Android thing of how they're doing payment or whatever. But it's essentially just that. Um, it's you can see all this stuff on there, and I don't want to open it up on here, but you can go on there and you can find it. But essentially, it's just that. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So Swagger is pretty cool because it also gives you kind of like everything you really need to make the request. Like you can do it all in there. They have a thing that says, "Hey, authenticate this like request," and all it wants is the GWT token or your authorization token, saying, "Hey, this is connected to this, whatever." That's the only hard thing about this process is getting that token. So the hardest part is what Alex did is recreating that authentication flow to get that token and do that. But if you really want to, you can, set up a middleman and you can snipe that token when you're signing in on your phone. But I think Alex did a much more elegant way of getting it.
But yeah, I mean, it's not impossible. Like everything is done on your phone. Requests. Where if it's on a website, you can just go through DevTools, that sort of thing. So it's not something that's impossible to do. And you shouldn't expect, like for security, you shouldn't just expect that if a request requires a token, that that's automatically secure.
Yeah. Any other questions? You're done here, Go tell your friends you got infinite money on the laundry app. But yeah, I'm sorry for any admins that are watching this. It's what happens. Yeah, hopefully they do. I mean, this is the only way you get change is you publicize your findings.